Leadership, 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 success, success, success. Hi, my name is Jonathan Medina. I'm America's #1 youth motivator. I'm your teacher, I'm your coach, I'm your friend, and I'm your teammate. And today we're talking about leadership and success. Today I want to tell you guys about one of my really great friends. She is an awesome, awesome leader. She is the founder of College Pathway Consulting. She's a founder and counselor. She has helped students at St. Joseph Academy since 2013. She's been helping many students. Many of her students have gone on to amazing universities. She's also been a corporate board member of Hobie, Texas Capital. She is a counselor and advisor with the University of Houston, with the University of Texas, Austin, and she's a founding board member of Girls on the Run, Rio Grande Valley, as well as she is a member of the TACAC, which is Texas Association for College Admissions and Counseling. She's also a member, or she helps to interview the Gates for the Gates Scholarship. Please help me welcome this very special, this very unique, amazing, amazing guest to give us her insight, her wisdom, and her information. Please help me welcome Miss Vilma Wolf. Hi, welcome, Miss Wolf.
How are you, Jonathan?
I'm not sure. Is your volume on?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. I just told everyone about all the amazing things. I told them how you have helped students at St. Joseph since 2013. I told them about your consulting company. I told them about how you are a wonderful, wonderful member of the community and how you also help to prepare students for many, many universities and the success that you've had. But can you tell us how you first got started helping students?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll backtrack a little bit because I never knew I was going to be in this position of helping students. I always knew that I wanted to help the younger people, but I didn't know in what capacity. So when I went and studied my bachelor's for psychology and sociology, I then knew I wanted to continue with my master's, but I still couldn't figure out exactly what master's I wanted. So once I did decide on counseling and guidance, and I took one of my college counseling classes, I really felt a pull for that class, right? I was really interested in it, especially because I am a first gen student, as we spoken about before. So I've always been very interested in helping students through that complex process. It wasn't complex back when I started, even though it was difficult because being a first gen, you don't have that support. So I wanted to pass that along to other students that also needed the support. So I started working obviously with students very young age in elementary school. But then when I started working at St. Joe, some of those same students were then now at St. Joe all grown up, right? So some of them felt like I was following them purposely. Then I initially at St. Joe was presented with the opportunity to do college counseling, which I had not done before in my elementary roles, right, as a school counselor. So I dove right into it, just having that knowledge from my master's class and then starting to learn myself, getting a lot more information, building my network with college reps really helped me out to understand more the process and what they were looking for. So then when I started working with my students, obviously I got some of my top students at the beginning and they all wanted to go to Ivy League schools. They all wanted to apply. So I understood a little bit more of that process for them, right? Because if you apply to an Ivy League school, obviously it's not just the essay, but you have to answer some other short questions or short answer questions. And I do remember my first student, if I can share that.
Absolutely,
It was
absolutely.
very interesting. Obviously, top Ivy League school he was applying to. I was very excited for him. I don't think he was a first gen, but he had some struggles throughout, his life. It wasn't easy. So when he was applying, it was such a dream for him, and it became my dream for him as well. And we worked on every part of his application. And I remember one of those essays, he decided to brainstorm with me in my office while he was typing it in. And obviously, I'm across the desk, so I don't see his computer. I failed to ask him where he was typing it in, right? And he happened to be typing it directly into the prompt area, the website, and the Wi-Fi failed. So we were almost to the end of his answering that short answer essay, which, as you know, they're very important as well, not just because they're short answers, it diminishes value. So it erased completely. And I knew then that that student deserved to be in that Ivy League school, because the way that he processed what had just happened was incredible. He was not deterred. Obviously, yes, he was a little bit upset that he had made that error, but he stayed in my office until he retyped it all. So I remember we didn't leave my office until probably close to 5 p.m., but he felt he had to accomplish what he had started. It didn't matter how long it took. And that's the type of students that get to fulfill their dreams, right? So I had many students like that, and he did get a full right, basically, to his Ivy League school. And then a couple of years later, I also had a student that did the Quest Bridge. So she also got to her dream school and was all paid for. So I get very excited for them and very hopeful, because these are students, like I mentioned, that are deserving, and I think they'll end up passing it forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think they definitely will. Now, of the students that you've worked with, about how many would you say now have gone on to some of these elite universities, just like that?
Well, we're a small school at St. Joseph Academy, right? So we probably have right now, I want to say, in between 65 to 58 variation year to year on the number of seniors. But this year, I know for a fact that some of them are still waiting on decisions. As April 1st is the ultimate deadline, right, for them to find out. But we've already have some students that already gotten accepted to Ivy League schools. So it's a small percentage, obviously, as you know, because it is difficult. So maybe we'll have 2%, 3% that actually get accepted into Ivy League schools.
Yeah, and for those of you that when you watch this, we are filming this on Friday, March 19th, which is only days away. So I'm sure these students are maybe they check every day to see if they get to find out early. They're back when I was in school, it was you received a letter. So I do remember that the letter started to roll in around this time of year. But now everyone gets to just watch it instantly, so everything is on the computer screen, and so the kids are always refreshing. What has it been like when some of your students get accepted to these schools? How have they reacted? How have the families reacted? What are some ways? Is everyone crying in your office? How does it?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, different ways, like you mentioned, right? They are refreshing their portals constantly so that they can not wait for the email, not wait for the letter, like you mentioned, but try to get it instantaneously. And it's been different ways. Some students do have that special moment with their families. Typically, they're refreshing and they're able to focus on that after school, not during school. But we did have, I know one of my students decided to figure it out while she was there, and while she was at school with her classmates. So as you say, there was a lot of tears of joy, excitement for everybody around. I think, you're being part of that, even if it's not you personally as classmates, how exciting that you are able to contribute somehow, because it does take a community, right, to even push you to adventure and dream and apply. How many more students, don't have that opportunity, that they get that encouragement? So yeah, the support is great. Obviously, then as counselors, we finally find out later on, right? We're not the first to hear about it, but certainly they do inform us, and we're obviously very happy for them. And basically the whole school celebrates for them.
Awesome, awesome. I love that, and I love that you have quite a few kids who do apply to those schools. I know for me at my high school, being that I was first gen, and maybe a lot of students would have been first gen at my high school. Um, I didn't feel, or the other kids didn't apply to schools just like this. So I was really the only one out of my top 10% who was really pushing for schools like I was applying to. So I was lucky that I was involved in other leadership programs. So I had other peers and other friends, and this wonderful thing called social media had just started to come out. So I was MySpace friends with kids from all over the Rio Grande Valley who were applying to these schools. For those of you that don't know, MySpace was before Facebook, before Instagram or TikTok or anything that's now, but it was what we had when I was a senior in high school. So I was connected, and I got to be a part of, kind of like what you just said, the people gathered and were friends. We were all just waiting to see who got their letters, and we'd send messages to who got into where. I do remember me and a couple of friends burning some Princeton stuff because we were a little upset we did not get to Princeton. I had a sweatshirt that I threw into a little bonfire, but we all
There's always a reason, though. There's always a reason.
absolutely.
Don't
Absolutely.
understand
I
it.
love Georgetown. I loved it. Loved Georgetown. Now, can you tell me? Now, you also got to work with student leadership programs. I saw you had Hobie on your some of the amazing things that you've been involved with. Can you tell us about working with student leaders from all across the state?
Oh, absolutely. I think, like I mentioned to you, I have a passion for college advising. I think it's really important. Education is power. I firmly believe that. I think that, once you gain that knowledge, you want to share it, and you share it in different ways. So what I decided to do is do volunteer work, right? So yes, like as you mentioned, Hobie is something that I found out actually when I started working at St. Joe. I had this new office. I had files I needed to go through. I needed to understand the system. I wanted really to dive into everything that had to do with preparing for college. And in one of those folders, I found the word Hobie. I had no idea what it was. I just knew, we were sending students, and that's about it. That was what I had to continue doing, right? Just send freshmen. Actually sophomores, but talk to the freshmen about it so that they would be prepared. So I had to give a presentation, right? And I remember thinking, okay, what is this Hobie? I know it's a youth leadership, but what is it? Like, I want to know. Well, I did something that they had never heard of before at Hobie, which is I reached out to them and I said, hi, I'm Vilma, I'm a counselor. Is there any way that I could volunteer? And of course, they're like, what? We've never had a counselor volunteer. Is basically their own ambassadors who grow up and appreciated what they learned in terms of their own leadership skills that then give back. So a lot of them were involved in some way with Hobie, and they continue. I was the outsider. I was the one looking from the outside, trying to understand what Hobie was. So I remember I became a senior facilitator. They obviously accepted my offer to volunteer. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, that was a while back. And it's in Austin. It's a 3 to 4 day event. And as a senior facilitator, I had junior facilitators, right? So again, these are the ambassadors that have already grown up and want to give back. And all these sophomores come in as ambassadors. And it is impressive to see how they come in as these hesitant kids that, they know that they have abilities, but they can't hone in what their skills are. And then they realize through Hobie that everybody has leadership skills in them, right? It's just, what is it for you? I mentioned to you when we met previously that I don't consider myself a public speaker. So that's not my leadership, right? I'm very meticulous. I like to learn about things. I like to figure it out. I like to place plan in order. I believe that's my leadership skill. So if students can realize that it's not always the one that's in the front of the room with a microphone, but that you can have a leadership skill that supports that and that is an integral part, then they start seeing how they have so much value. So by the end of the third or fourth day, they realize they're leaders. So now it's, what do you do with it now, right? So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that. I'm now on the board of Hobie Texas Capital, which is amazing because now, seeing the bigger picture, I'm able to contribute a different way without, not doing what I enjoy doing, but I'm just doing it differently now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, and I love that how you did it as an outsider. That's very unique story of how to get involved in one of these organizations. So that's awesome. I had a few friends who were went to Hobie that were with me that day that I was burning the Princeton stuff. So I specifically remember Hobie quite a bit.
Because they knew they were deserving.
Yeah, and my friends, just to share, my friends, we did not get into Princeton that day. They also did not get into Princeton. But my friend who was there that day, she went to Yale Law School. I'm sorry, not Yale, UPenn Law, and then went to or also Rice undergrad, UPenn Law, was Teach for America, and is now a lawyer in Philadelphia. My other friend that was there that day, she went on to Texas A&M on basically a full ride, and then she has been featured on Good Morning America and some other many other national programs. So it was a fun little group that we were there burning the Princeton stuff.
And look at you now. You're a public speaker and a motivator. And, there's always a reason why things happen. And I think when you get a no, that can go two ways, right? You either decide this is it, I shouldn't keep trying, or it becomes a motivator. And I think we need those no's. We need those challenges. We need those people that are challenging to us so that we can prove to ourselves and to others, that it can be done. So you're an example of that too.
Oh, thank you. Well, absolutely. Now, you also work with the Gates Scholarship. So can you tell us about how being involved in clubs and organizations just like Hobie or other ways that people are involved really helps them to prepare for the interview or for the essays, and how leadership plays a critical role in things like getting more scholarships or getting into top schools?
Absolutely. And for this is also, it's volunteer work, right? That I do for the Gates Scholarship. And I just remember one time I got an email. I knew what it was, right? But I got an email offering, or suggesting if I wanted to apply to become an interviewer. And I said, you know what, let me try this. I've never done this before. And again, that was 4 or 5 years ago when I initially started. And oh my gosh, yes, I knew the kids had to be on the top of their class, obviously. They needed to be good leaders. They needed to be involved in the community. That's kind of like the trademark of all these students that do get to be finalists, basically, for the interview process. But wow, when I interviewed that first year and I had about 4 or 5 students, I can't recall, I was mesmerized. I was more motivated and influenced by them than what they got out of me, for sure. I mean, I just couldn't believe the amount of things that these young people were doing. Not only, as you know, the Gates Scholarship is for financial need, right? Low income students. That's one of the requirements. So, or the criterias. So I know that these students already have some difficulty, but it did not appear by the amount of involvement that they had. They managed to make time for everything, not only being in the top of their class, but being involved in the community, looking for internships, helping their families on top of everything, and being appreciative of their community. We go back to community, right? To their families, to their peers that would encourage them to apply to these Ivy League schools that maybe it wouldn't be able to happen if they didn't have that support. Like I mentioned earlier, me as a first gen student, I didn't have a lot of people pushing me, right? Because, it's just not the norm for some people. For others, it's just so usual for them to just continue on through college. But these students that end up being as finalists for the interviews, they're just amazing students and they do get involved. I read your book, by the way,
Oh, thanks.
and yes, very interesting. And I know that they did some of the things that you did, right? So it is just say yes and be part of something. And you start baby steps, but then suddenly their confidence grows and they start looking for these leadership positions. And I think it's an evolution for them that by the time that I see them and I'm interviewing them, like I tell you, I gain so much from that interaction because they are amazing people. And just like they did in high school of becoming involved, maybe the light bulb for them wasn't like ninth grade, right? But maybe it did become in 10th or 11th grade, that light bulb moment, like I really need to get involved. And just like they've managed to do that, I can only see what they're going to do in college. And those students are deserving to be finalists for sure. Um, they do talk about it. I know that that's some of the prompts are related to that. And I want them to, when I interview them, I want them to elaborate a little bit about that, tell me more about that, because it is interesting how different people make different choices and how those choices lead them to certain results, right? So I like to learn from all of my students, what is it that got you here? When I interview students, it could be somebody that's, wanting to be a teacher and that's her passion. And I'll have another student that wants to be an engineer and another student that wants to be a doctor or a lawyer, so it's such a variation. It's not like one standard. And interestingly enough, this year, I got more girls than boys to interview.
I love it. I love it. And that's so great because I like how you talk about the evolution. So it isn't that light bulb moment doesn't always have to be when we start. You referenced my book. I was the shy, reluctant leader for a long time. I didn't even want to join the clubs. And then when I joined the clubs, I was shy and nervous. And it took a long while for me to get to where, even my college coaches, they see me now. And I was quiet when I got to Georgetown. So I'm not sure if a lot of times when I join a group, I tend to be a little more quiet, reserved. And then boom, the light bulb goes off. Um, and so my college coaches and teammates all think it's wild that I am speaking across the country and now have reached 1 million students at organizations all the way from Harvard and Princeton, all the way down to speaking at public schools all across the country. So, they all think it's, how has he become this? But I think being involved in all these things, it almost forces you to evolve to uh, a better leader, a more not just qualified, but you gain all of these skills that now translate for the rest of your life. So I think,
Absolutely. I think you grow, you grow and you just keep evolving and keep growing. And it's those challenging moments, right? The no's from Princeton, for example, that propel you to be more, to know more, to prove to yourself that you can do it. And everybody's deserving. It's just the different paths to get there. Um, you mentioned that about your friends, not understanding how this happened. Well, I think it was your passion, because I think passion just takes you to these places that you can't even imagine. It'll just take you there. And life works like that. Again, I had a passion a long time ago. I was a stay-at-home mom. I knew I wanted to help the youth. I didn't know how. I decided I was going to start with my two own children, and then it kind of grew into helping other students, which I'm grateful that I have that opportunity to do so.
yeah, and absolutely, I love how you say I was a stay-at-home mom, but then you started doing this, and now it resulted in you now helping many kids every single year apply to top scholarships, apply to top schools. I used to mentor specifically a kid who went to Hobie. I used to mentor him because he was a part of another student leadership group that I managed, and there was a mom who was incredible, and her kids all got into top schools and on ended up going on scholarships to like UT's honor program, but they did get into Ivy League schools. They just chose to go to UT honors program. But that mom, she didn't just take, helping her kids, but she was actually helping an entire community. So she was helping all of these kids at her kids' high school. So that way, these first gen kids would also get the opportunity, not just her kids, because her and her husband had been to college, but also for the other kids in the community. And you do it as well. But that passion comes out from doing things like that. And I think for me, when I was doing all the interviews in the Rio Grande Valley for Georgetown, I would try to kind of figure out what is this student passionate about? What are some things? What are they going to tell me? What kind of stories are they going to share? How are they going to elaborate on this wonderful resume that I might see on paper, but now I need them to make it come alive with the passion. So when I give advice to students, I tell them as they prepare for the college interviews to somehow figure out how to bring out the passion, how to share that passion by telling stories often. But how would you tell a student who was preparing for the interview? So maybe they are a finalist out there, or they want to be a finalist, and or maybe it's not just the interview, but for other interviews. How would you tell them to be
Absolutely.
successful in the finalist interviews?
Absolutely. And like you said, we have those students that come to my office and they'll say, Miss Wolf, I got an interview in 1 hour, where can I set up? And okay, let's set you up. And we have them ready, whether now it's Zoom, right? But before it used to be in person, or they would have an interview at Starbucks with, an alumni or somebody, but from the college. And I always say the same thing, just be authentic. You can't go wrong if you're being yourself. And I think it's great when we see people that have flaws, right? Because nobody's perfect. And that's what's great about us, that we have imperfection. But if I can see you as a student, that you can say, I messed up, and, I took a wrong turn and then I got back on track. I think that's amazing of people than just saying, I'm this perfect person that's on paper. Even when my students write the essays, yeah, you don't want to hear this sad story. That's not what it's about. It's what happened, what happened to now get you into being this amazing person. So yeah, give us context, but don't let that be the guide of, being victimized somehow. I don't like students to feel like that, because they're the captains of their own ship, so they can decide what to do. However, as a counselor, you do understand that not everybody had it easy, right? Not everybody has these amazing backgrounds. So you have to understand that part, be sensitive to it, but encourage them to just let their light shine when they're doing these interviews. Maybe touch on that subject a little bit, because maybe it is part of the essay when it talks about opportunities and challenges. Yeah, you talk about the challenges, but that's not the main focus, right? It's why do you want to now go to an Ivy League school, right? Why do you dream so big? Where does that come from? If you come from these challenging um, environment or background, or something tragic happened throughout your life, then what's propelling you? So if you're authentic and you're truthful, and even your personality, let it shine through. I have students that they're funny. So why are you going to treat an interview as this formal thing where they're trying to find out exactly who you are as a person, right? So let your personality come out. It's not all about laughing during the interview, but let your personality come out a little bit. Be relaxed. I always say, just be relaxed. It's another person on the other side, just like you. They were young, just like you one time.
Mhm.
And like I said, if it helps at all, I just want them to know that for me, as a counselor, um, I get inspired by them. So they're contributing something great as well when they give these interviews. Maybe we won't say it at the time, right? Because it is an interview, but anybody that interacts with students of this caliber, with this amount of dreams and passion and hope for the future, it only inspires us to do what we're doing. you're an educator as well in your role, right? So I'm sure you get those moments of, wow, this is an amazing kid. Like, this is great. Where can we make more of these? How can we help to create more students like these?
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree with that. We need more and more awesome students. The kids that you interview, the kids that you get to work with, um, tend to be, I think, I was thinking, as you were told that, of a young lady who was from the same area where you're from, Brownsville, Texas. She was state officer for Texas Technology Students of America, TSA. Um, and she was one of my first interviews, that very first year that I interviewed for Georgetown students. She was one of my favorites. And so she does get accepted. Her name is Aleida. She gets accepted. She goes on to Georgetown. She ends up becoming the vice president of the entire student body while at Georgetown. And I'm not sure there had ever been like a Hispanic female. And she's only like, I'm not sure that she is 5 foot. I think she's 5 foot, or maybe maximum 5'1",
Petite.
little tiny petite girl. But because she was involved in programs, because she had great passion, she became, even though she was small in physical size, her impact on the campus was great because of, she didn't see herself as a victim. She was going to make changes happen no matter what. So she always would fight for the other students who maybe they were experiencing challenges. She was like, oh, I'm going to fight for the other students. But I wanted to say that, she came in, she had these big goals, these big dreams. She had a huge plans and idea, vision for her life. And so I love seeing this great vision, this great passion that this young lady, and she had thought about possible ways how she would create impact in the world. So I'll never forget her interview just because of those things. And then I've seen that many of the students who end up having success in the interviews for Georgetown do that. They show it. I think you said, let your light shine. They do that. They let their passion, their stories, it all just comes out of them into the interview.
Well, and it's interesting that you said that about, impact in the community, right? You can already tell the students that are doing something now, that they're going to continue doing it. And it can only, we go back to the to the word evolve. It can only evolve into being something greater, bigger, better than what they're doing right now. Education is power. The more education they get, the greater reach they're going to have with the passion that they have. How do they want to use it, and how to target it? Who are the people that they want to help? You just gave that example of, and by the way, there's a saying that says, great, amazing things or precious things come in small packages. So you said she went and fought for other people, right? For what she believes, she helped them. Because sometimes, you know, not everybody has that ability to speak up. And you only need that one supporter to push you or to give you that permission to say, it's okay, say what you want, do what you want to do, be who you want to be. So I think these interviews are very helpful in that respect, because these students also, again, get that permission of, you're on the right track, like you're doing amazing things, like keep going. And I go back to, we don't know exactly what their background is, what their family situation is. So maybe you will be one of those few people that will be encouraging to them and just say, keep going, even though when they might not think that they're deserving at times. I know some of the students, once I interview them and I'll say, congratulations, you're on this last part. And some of them are like shocked. They're like, I just never thought that I was going to get this far. So there's so much potential in them, and some believe it more than others. But I think at the end, they're all going to do great things with their passion.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Now, let's say we've been giving a lot of advice to students or to people who work with students. Let's say I'm a counselor and I've never had a student apply to, let's say, Gates Millennium, and they just got an email that they're a finalist, so they have to interview, and I don't know what to tell them. What advice do you give to another counselor, another educator who is helping a student prepare?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think we go back to the same thing, you know. I wouldn't even put too much pressure on them of, wearing a suit. I think back then, back when I started with college counseling, one of the things was, dress up professionally, you want to play the part. But and that could be for maybe a personal interview at like the institution when you're actually physically there, but I don't focus that much. I just like be yourself, be authentic. um Show the things that you've been doing. So if you're modest, and most of them are, in an interview is not the time to be modest. It's okay to share the things that you've been doing without any hesitation. Um, I think sometimes I feel that students will have a difficult time saying, well, yeah, I'm the president of, this club or that organization, but say it with pride. It's okay. It's not something negative, but sometimes I feel like I don't want to be, bragging about myself. But in an interview, it's time to show everything that you've done, talk about your accolades, talk about the resume and your volunteer work and your extracurricular. It's all good. So for other counselors, just encourage that, and encourage them to, yes, articulate. So perhaps remember a little bit of what you wrote, maybe go back to your essays, reread them, because if they do ask you, tell us about what you wrote, you want to be able to articulate that a little bit better, right? Then it's very different than when you wrote it to actually now articulating it in an interview, because you don't have time to think, to retype and go back and edit. Now you're just going to talk about yourself. So that's why I say be comfortable. um, the interview is not judging. So counselors need to remind this of their students. Whoever's interviewing you, they're your ally. They're on your team, right? They want to know and they want to root for you, and they're going to applaud your efforts. So it's okay. Have the counselors tell them to be unique and authentic in their way, right? And you cannot go wrong with that. Another thing is that if they do get that interview, I don't know if you know, but the interviews are held between March 1st and March 31st. And the interviewer does reach out to the student and say, okay, I have these days available, times available. So I would just suggest to the counselor to just tell the students to get back to the interviewer. The sooner the better, right? To set up times. And for sure, the counselors need to remind, because sometimes, the whole process is not known to students. You mentioned a little while ago MySpace versus Facebook versus TikTok, and right, times change. So sometimes students don't know that it is really um, good to send a thank you card or a thank you email back to your interviewer, especially because they are volunteers, right? So you want to thank them for their time. And if there's anything else that you found was interesting of the conversation, share it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to change the interviewer's rating per se. Maybe you sent the thank you card after you've been already evaluated, but it just talks about you as a person, to be thankful for the people that are there in your life and that are somehow contributing, or you're gaining something from. So I think counselors need to really remind them of those. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Not ethical, but etiquette. Etiquette, right? The etiquette. So as you can tell, English is not my first language. It's my second. So etiquette, right? The etiquette goes a long ways. And sometimes, again, with time, it's been lost. There's no more thank you cards written anymore, or we don't hardly get anything in the mail. But if it's through email, it's the same thing. You're just thanking people for being there for you and giving up your time. So I think that's important for the counselors to just remind them of.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed. I do remember one student who, I think her older brother or older sister was already at one of the top schools, and I was interviewing her for Georgetown, and it almost seemed like she knew the process the way other students don't know the process because her brother or sister had just done it a year or two before. So she had like a super nice email. She had her response was awesome. Then she knew how to greet me really well. We met at Starbucks. As soon as it was over, I got a thank you text. I didn't even remember giving her my address, but I got something in the mail, a thank you note from her in the mail, and I was like, "Whoa!" I haven't had in like a physical thank you. I've gotten some emails before many times, but um, and you never know because sometimes I write my recommendation right after the meeting, but
Mhm.
sometimes I write it 3 4 a week later. So there's nothing wrong with sending those. I would say the more thank yous the better. but
Absolutely. Again, if you do it out of, you know, being nice about giving thanks and not looking for something in return, like a better rating, I
yeah,
think
and
it shows through.
yeah, she didn't make it feel like she was being a robot that
Yeah.
no, I have to do this, but it just felt very like that's how this person is. Maybe that's what her parents have taught her, or something like that, and so it was just like a very nice little thing.
And it goes back to what I said, right? You're saying maybe her parents did teach her, right? But not everybody has that same ability to have gained that knowledge throughout because of their background. So that's why I think for counselors, we're in this unique position where we know what's going on with them. We know that's what's coming ahead. We know when an interview just happened or things of that sort. So it is our time to kind of guide. And I think it's best if we assume that they don't know anything, right? So even if they might give us the rolling of the eyes because somebody really knows exactly what to do, I think it's our job to pretend like they don't know anything and we're educating from the bottom so that they know every step of the way when they're doing these interviews. And I said a while ago, right? Before we used to teach about even the way they dress. Well, to be in this top category of students already, I don't think they need much of that guidance already because they've been in so many leadership positions that that's already kind of been taught. And if you know your student, right, as a counselor, I would know which student probably needs that advice and who doesn't really need that advice. But I think the step by step, they're going to contact you, you're going to have to respond. Try not to wait more than 48 hours to respond. It's their time as well. Make sure that you coordinate with them a time just not just for you, but that it also works for them. So don't constrain your interviewer to just this time from this time because that's the only time I have. So give them some options. And like you said, I mean, before I used to do the Starbucks interviews, and I used to do the public library interviews, which is another thing that's key. Maybe the student, I'm not sure from their end if they get from the Gates or any other scholarship the procedure, right? That you're not supposed to be alone with a student. So I don't know if the student gets that on their end or not. I know that for us, that's super important. But as a counselor, just remind them, make sure you go to a public setting, like put them in a safe position as well, because you don't know what they don't know. So it's just better to talk about it in at length in all these different areas, and then leave it open for them to ask you questions. That's something that I also do in my interviews, by the way, is, I do the whole, there's a way of me doing the interview, but then I always leave opportunity at the end for them to ask questions. I'm sure that they also are intrigued by who's on the other side. And you're human too, and you have a story to share that might help somebody else, which, when you approach me, I'm like, okay, we'll do an interview because I think that this might help other people too, to
Mhm.
know that they can do things that they probably didn't see themselves doing. Again, I thought for a while I would just be a stay-at-home mom, but then, the light bulb happens and you're like, okay, I can help more than just my two children. So what can I do? And the more open you are to that, the opportunities to start coming your way, and you just have to position yourself um, to those moments and be willing to say yes, because you might not know what you're saying yes to, right? But if you're doing it with good intention and you know your heart and you know your passion, then why not say yes?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Now, Vilma, is there any other advice you'd want to give as we close out this session? Any more advice you'd want to give to a student out there? I think you've been so inspiring today to anyone who's listening, whether they're a student, a parent, a counselor. I think so much of what you said today is so inspiring. So thank you so much for taking the time to do it. But do you have any more advice you want to share out there to the world?
Oh my gosh. Yes, let's say parting words. Do you, do what brings you joy, do what brings you happiness. And again, everything else is going to fall into place, but be willing to do the work too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Again, this show is all about leadership. It's all about success. And today was a very special, very unique session. Normally, it's only student leaders to student leaders sharing their advice. But today we have Vilma, who is a very unique perspective. She has been on state student leadership boards, as well as she again she interviews the finalists for the Gates Scholarship. Again, so if you don't know, the Gates Scholarship gives you a full ride, many years. I think all the way up to your doctorate's degree in help financially. So many of my friends who have gone to Gates have gone on to get their PhDs, have gone on to become doctors. So it's very competitive. It's hard to get. And so use the advice that Miss Wolf gave today so that way you can be one of those students who gets that scholarship, gets that help, and goes and makes an impact on the world. Thank you guys so much. And thank you, Miss Wolf.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And I'm very happy for you, Jonathan. I don't know if you told your audience that I met you many years ago, and we were doing the reverse basically, right? I wanted you to come and talk to my students. So life works in mysterious ways, right?
Yes. And so, yes, everyone out there, that's how me and Miss Wolf met each other. I was doing all the interviews for Georgetown University for the area where I live. So each year it was about 30 to 40 interviews. Some years I split it with another alumni, but many of the years it was just me. So we'd get this huge list of students applying, and about 4 or 5 were going to get in. And so it's super competitive, but because of that, I got to meet so many leaders. I got to learn, just like Miss Wolf mentioned, that the students have been so inspiring. Meeting parents at a Starbucks after the interview and them being so grateful, and just all the different ways, and seeing those kids go on to be successful. Some of them that I interview go to other schools, some go to Georgetown, and just seeing them all go on to be successful. So it is inspiring. You have no idea, students and teachers out there, the stories that I learned from doing the interviews have helped me to work with all the thousands upon thousands of students nationwide because of the interview. And Miss Wolf, my counselor, I share all across the country about Mr. Cortez being when I didn't believe in myself, he believed in me. And actually got to do a staff development for his school district that he's at now. And so he came on, all of us were crying in a staff development because I got to thank him in front of everyone on Zoom. Um, but
But
I
you
could
mentioned
not have
something
done it.
interesting, right? That he supported you and he encouraged you. So when you say, what advice do we have for counselors? It's that we might be the only ones that are like really pushing and have them envision themselves farther than they even envision themselves at the time, right? So
Mhm.
I'm glad that you've had that support too.
Yes. So again, student leaders, thank you guys so much. If I wish we could be on stage and I could tell everyone in the whole huge audience, like, make some noise and clap for people. But thank you so much for being a part of it today. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
everyone out there today.
My pleasure. Bye.
Now, don't leave. I wanted to ask, so you finished my book? I didn't know that you had done that.
I haven't finished it completely, but yes, I've already um, saw the coaches that inspired you, the whole running, the you were thin and smaller and you didn't think you were going to do this. And so, yeah, I'm on all that process right now. So it's good. It's a lot of those stories, Jonathan. It's very similar.
Mhm.
Students, dream of being something and they feel like they're stuck, right? That they're never going to get there. But you put in the work, and it's about us putting in the work. It's
Mhm.
not going to happen by itself, but we do have to be open. You took the opportunities to even just be a member when you really wanted to be a president of a club or a leadership role, but you took it as being a member. And we have to start somewhere. And I think the earlier the kids realizes, the better it is. I'm really glad that I also work with 7th and 8th graders, because I get to talk to them about this before everything counts in 9th grade, right? I'm like, this is what a transcript looks like. Like, you need to really understand, that it's coming. So how are you preparing for 9th grade? But again, it's the maturity level and the light bulb, like I said, doesn't always come right in 9th grade, and it might take a little while, but you did it all. You're talking about it, all of that in the book.
Yeah, and I've been so surprised so many times when I've gone to speak with some top students. They didn't have a counselor that put that through them. I was lucky. By the time I got to high school, I was already a top 10% student. So we were focused on staying top 10 or whatever, right? So we knew, okay, we need this many pre-AP classes, this many AP classes. But if you're not one of those students, I'm not sure that every counselor breaks down. I've spoken to many students who they're graduating. They're like, oh, I didn't know I was even on track to be a top student. It just happened. It's like, oh,
I agree.
with the
I
intent.
agree. That's actually why I started my company last year, because I started getting approached by families and they're like, can you help my child? Can you help my child? Like, they're not getting any support. And I can see it, if you're part of this enormous high school and you only have 2 or 3 counselors, it is going to be difficult for you to be noticed, unless you're that student that's speaking up and that's going to the front of the desk and, hey, can you help me? But how many students are out there that want to, but they just don't know how to, one, to say it, or two, to approach an adult? They're intimidated. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm able to help students outside of St. Joe that also have, their dreams of going to amazing schools. And you mentioned a little while ago about, that some students got into Ivy League schools but decided not to. I've had those students also. They're like, no, thank you, it's too far away. My family and my culture come first. And that's valid too. That's why, as counselors, we just need to be open-minded to what they want. If they just wanted to get that acceptance and validation, but still decide something else, that's okay too. That's okay too.
Absolutely. Well, we need to talk more. I would love to hear more about your consulting company and how we can. I've been wanting to do something like that. So maybe we should talk on another time.
Maybe we should talk at another time. You see, that's why things happen, and that's why we always have to say yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. But let me let you go. And but yes, let's keep in touch. I will have to go to Brownsville, and we can meet at a Starbucks and talk.
Let me know when you're down. We'll do more than Starbucks. There's so many amazing restaurants down here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm always the worst. I go and I often just go get beans at Ultimo Taco. I love getting the beans especial.
I've been there too, but there's better
No, there's
places.
so much more. There's so much more. I know. I'm always like, I go fast and then I leave and I'm like, oh, it's off the highway. Let me stop and get the. But
no, let me know when you're down. We definitely we'll chat more for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again. You have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we need to connect more.
Yes, yes, sir. Bye.
Bye.